Tom Fitton, of course, the grand poobah at Judicial Watch, is with us. And thanks for joining us on a Saturday morning, Tom. Man, I really appreciate it. With your new book, A Republic Under Assault, The Left's Ongoing Attack on American Freedom. A great, great read. Thank you for writing this.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me on, and Merry Christmas to you.
I got to tell, same to you. I love the way you divide the book into sort of the big topics that really help crystallize the problem that I think all of us on the right have with this monolith that now has become some kind of cabal between the left and big tech and the media and the DNC, and they're all one. And they're just in so many ways, from so many different directions, attacking American freedom. Let's start out with something a little later in the book. You talk about voter fraud, and you really chronicle a lot of different mechanisms that they're using there. And we've seen now the Supreme Court just last night said, hey, the Texas thing, they're not even going to hear it. It seems to be a done deal. Joe Biden's going to be our next president, right?
Well, that's what they would have you believe. I don't think that's necessarily the case. There are other lawsuits percolating in other courts, substantial challenges, and ultimately the Electoral College votes are counted by Congress, and they can object to elector slates from compromised elections. So it ain't over. And the question is the president going to keep on pushing?
What's really cool is you write about how the left used this pandemic, and they will use any opportunity. What did you say? That you quoted Rahm Emanuel in there? Let's not let a crisis go to waste. That's really a recurring theme. Boy, all of the reforms they've wanted for the last two generations, they were able to, just like a Trojan horse, just bring in, right, one after another during this pandemic.
Yeah, they didn't get everything they wanted, but they wanted a lot, and it was their number one priority. People don't understand a lot of the reforms they pushed in through the pandemic, and they weren't reforms. They were undermining election integrity. They made the number one legislative priority when Pelosi was put back in power. It was H.R. 1. And this mail-in-ballot scheme is something they've always wanted, and they used the pandemic as an excuse to get it. And you'll notice in the book, and if we've been warning otherwise, that this was a threat to fair and clean elections, and it turned out that we were right.
Yeah. Well, you know what I don't understand, because you and Judicial Watch have, I think, far and above, beyond any other organization, been able to, with documentary evidence through your aggressive use of Freedom of Information Act requests and suits where necessary, you have made it undeniably true what a lot of folks, on the right and talking heads say, well, we think this is going on and the left is doing that. You've got it there. Why is it that we waited until after the election? Why is it that, the Hillary Clinton email scandal, how come the Republicans don't take that information and really use that to their advantage to hammer it home and undo the left's assault on American freedom? I mean, that your information is out there, and I struggle with it. If there was someone there are people on the left doing that. The Democrats take that information and they just pummel the Republicans, whether it's Congress or whether it's Donald Trump in the Oval Office. I've always scratched my head there. It's frustrating to me. Is it frustrating to you?
Yeah, it is frustrating, but the fact is Hillary Clinton is a president, and I think the Republicans took the approach, well, Judicial Watch got these documents out. The consequences were she wasn't put in as president. By documents, I mean exposing her emails and all the corruption associated with that. And so they think, well, we're done. We don't need to worry about accountability. On the election issue, they don't think the way the left does, which is that these fights are worth having. They don't like engaging in them. Yeah. I have to hand it to the President Trump. He saw the threat, and he organized some legal resistance that previously had never really existed before. But the fact is, they only needed key victories in certain states, and they got them, to change the rules in a way to make it almost impossible to conclude that anything other than fraud happened.
Yeah, it's really frustrating. We're talking with Tom Fitton, who's, of course, the president of Judicial Watch and author of the new book, A Republic Under Assault, The Left's Ongoing Attack on American Freedom. What are the tea leaves telling you, Tom, about the Georgia runoff election? And I guess it's hard, when you have freedom of information request and the deep dives that you take into these assaults on freedom, sadly, have to be after the fact because you can't ask for information until it's there. But are you optimistic that it's going to be a fairer, less mischievous election process in Georgia, and that actually the voters will speak? Or I'm concerned that the same processes that led to some nefarious behavior may lead to a Senate majority for the Dems. What are you thinking?
Well, as president of Judicial Watch, I'm not going to take a position as to who should win, but I can tell you that it is the same process that led to the disputed results that we're now seeing with the presidential race. So I don't know why we would think that the elections will be any more honest or fair in Georgia's Senate races in January than they were in November.
Do you plan
as you point out, Rusty, none of the rules have changed.
Yeah. Do you plan on, in the wake of this, let's make a reasonable assumption that so far there's been a pretty abysmal record of success on the various lawsuits at the state and now we've heard in the national level by the Trump world to try to overturn some of these things, and especially in Pennsylvania, how disappointing that was. That clearly it seems like to any objective mind that was an unconstitutional action that went there with the letting the deep state in Pennsylvania modify election rules. But are you going to go back in order to try to insulate and claw back some of the missteps and mischievous things that happen so that it doesn't happen again in 22 and 24 and beyond? Is that going to be a real thrust going forward that we can expect from Judicial Watch to try to unpack this and really expose it to the American public, a lot of that evidentiary stuff that we haven't seen in detail yet?
Yes, we have so many FOIA requests right now at the state level, and these are Freedom of Information Act requests, or the state variation of that. There's so many that I can't count, and so we'll be in court soon on some of those, and we're already in court in at least 3 states to clean up voter rolls, which is something we've been doing for years. When you have dirty voting rolls, you can have dirty elections, and I tell you what, generally speaking, we've got to end mail-in balloting. It's a menace to free and fair elections. Sure, there are exceptions, but the exception of someone fighting in the mountains of Afghanistan highlight that no one else really has a legitimate excuse.
Yeah, and you know what bothers me about it? It's certainly not illegal if the election laws are changed to allow by mail voting. What troubles me as a person who tries to be engaged with policies and the stances of various politicians as they ask for my vote is that when you send ballots, let's even theorize that you have clean voter rolls, everything is done on the up and up. I don't think it's good for our republic. Do you? That people are getting many people that are just disengaged. They don't really care. They never have voted. They had no intent of voting. But now all they have to do is go to the mailbox, and the last thing they heard on CNN or MSNBC that their kids' college debt will be forgiven sounds like a good idea. Check the box for Biden, throw it in and that would have probably never been a vote for Biden or whatever leftist you want to put in there. That's what bothers me. It engages an uninformed electorate. Yay or nay?
I agree. And besides the technical issues and fraud issues with mail-in balloting, it's a bad policy in the sense that the left doesn't even want elections. And mail-in balloting over months, that's not an election. That's a poll or a survey. Oh. And that's no way to run a country and select elected leaders, in my view.
Well said.
I think you're exactly right.
Yeah.
It's a war on elections. It's even that they don't even want us to vote. They don't want us to vote as traditionally understood.
Yeah. And that's a good way to put it. And, I always, when I delve into that notion and try to, forward that hypothesis, I'm always afraid of sounding like an elitist. That's not what it's like. That's not what it's about. It's about people being informed. You don't have to have a Harvard education to know what's going on in your state and what your state senator or rep candidate is thinking, or for that matter, the president. And, it doesn't take a big read to get on someone's website and look at what their policy positions are. You can do that in a couple minutes. But how many people do we know that you ask them, just basic rudimentary questions about our system of governance and about our history of small government? They have no clue. They think that the government is, and the taxpayers are just a charity. And like you say, it's a poll. Thank you for offering that. I'll give you credit.
Well, just think about this. Just think if the day didn't matter, if you're President Trump, you'd say, well, let's have it on December 1st, because that way everyone can take into account the success of the vaccines.
That's
of course,
right.
Election Day matters, and they don't want it to matter because they don't want anyone to be held accountable for anything.
Yeah. Well, they were sure successful with that strategy, and you call it out in one of the sections that really anyone out there who needs just a great chronicle of all of the talking points that you will need as you go forward, and you point out in an I told you so mode, the deep state is real. It is attacking your freedoms, to whatever friend you're talking across the water cooler or the kitchen table or whatever, next to the hearth at the holiday party, if politics comes up. Republic Under Assault, The Left's Ongoing Attack on American Freedom by Tom Fitton, president of Judicial Watch, is a great read and a great resource. Thank you, Tom, for writing this book. Keep up the fabulous work you're doing there. I love every time I see you on the tube or read anything you write. So thanks so much, and tell all the good folks at Judicial Watch, salute from all of us here at the station and on the show. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome, Randy. Thank you very much for having me.